Random thoughts. In this video, I'm introducing a new document, and I know some people are going to be like, no, don't do that because there is a document that is unfinished, and that's the document of Sir Richard Burton. I finished the first book. There are two books. We are done with the first book, which ends at when he has arrived at Harar, and we are going to pick up. I'm going to go through the second book, and then we can continue from the stories. But before then, I'm going to go through another document. Of course, I did a document, or I've done a few videos from Bin Batuta's book, and I cannot do a lot more from that book because it's the place where he talks about East Africa is a very short part of the book, and I know the people who watch me are more interested in the history of East Africa. And so if I start talking about West Africa or North Africa or India, I don't think most of the people who watch me will find that interesting. I'm not saying there are no people who will find that to be interesting, but there will not be huge numbers of people who will find that to be interesting. So I'll go back, or I'll come back to the book by the book First Steps in East Africa, Exploration of Harar, Part 2, and we can go and we will go through that book. But in the meantime, I'm introducing a new document, and it's a document that is titled Bantu Beliefs and Magic. Now, this is a document that is written by one Charles William Hobley. This is not a new character. I've covered another book that he did, and the book I covered from him is a book that is titled Eastern Uganda and an Ethnological Survey, which is a book that gave us a lot of stories from what was then known as Eastern Uganda, which is the land from the border of Uganda today and Kenya up to Naivasha. All that part was called Eastern Uganda. And this individual came to Kenya in 1890s. 1894, I think, or 1890, came to Kenya 1890, and he was brought to East Africa. Then it was called the East Africa Protectorate. He was brought to this part of the world by the Imperial East Africa Company, IBA. This is the company that came to East Africa and bought the rights of using the land from local people by tricking them, basically. Now he comes, and then later on he leaves that company, and then he is employed by the British government, and he became an administrator. He becomes a provisional commissioner. First, he became a provisional commissioner of what was then called the Kavirondo, and then later on he moved to central Kenya, mostly Ukambani region, where he stayed a lot. And it seems like this guy was very interested in understanding Africans. And I think he wasn't alone. Many of these British had that interest. And it was not because they loved Africans. I think it's because they needed to understand these people if they were going to control them. And this guy became very valuable to the British. In fact, the British found him to be so valuable because wherever he was sent, he was so good at creating relationships with people and learning the languages and learning the culture, asking questions here and there, and identifying individuals who could give him information. He was so good with that. In fact, other British officials used to praise him a lot. And in fact, even others who've written books about the East Africa Protectorate have used him as a very reliable source because they came to realize he was very talented at collecting information about Africans. So another book, the book we are going to go through is a book called, as I've said, Bantu Beliefs and Magic. And this book covers two communities. It covers the Akamba people and it covers the Kikuyu people. Now, when it comes to the Akamba people, he himself does say that he did not have a lot of problem accessing information from the Kamba. The elders were more open to giving him information that he needed. Where he ran into problems is among the Kikuyu. The Kikuyu, he found out that they were not easy giving out secrets about their culture and customs and beliefs. And at some point, he needed, or he did have to be initiated. I don't know what rank he reached in the initiation hierarchy, but he says that he was forced to be initiated so that he could get some information. And then he also says that he did have to rely on another individual, a guy who was a Swahili guy. And this guy had come to central Kenya and he had lived with the people, and he had at some extent become like a Kikuyu basically. And they had started thinking of him to be a Kikuyu. And he did collect a lot of information from the people, giving it to this guy. So that's where he gets this information. Of course, there will always be that room that he did not get everything correctly. There could be that there are things that he either was misled or things like that. So there's always that room. And there's also the room that maybe the way he was writing down this information was biased. But I don't think that's a problem, actually, even though many people say, oh, these people were writing these documents to portray us in a certain way. I don't think we should be so concerned about that, and for one reason. And the reason is that these documents were not written for Africans to read. It was not written for us to read. So us reading this document, we were not the targeted reader. The targeted reader, especially for this kind of information, was not even the general public in the UK. Because when it comes to information that is going to the general public in the UK, that one can be, the people are not interested in providing the accurate information. They'll be interested in providing information that will elicit certain feelings from the people. So such kind of document will not be reliable. A document that was generated either here or in the UK, but was meant for the public, that is not going to be very reliable. But a document that is, you can tell that it was generated not for the public, not for Africans, of course, that's so obvious, but not for the British public either. It was a document generated either for the administrators, for the academicians and people like that. Such documents seem to be, or tend to be, very accurate, or they tend to be generated with the goal of them being as accurate as it is possible. So yeah, so this is the book we are going to go through. We are going to try to learn, or from it we are going to see what Hobley learned about the beliefs of the Akamba and the Agikuyu, especially the beliefs and the magic of the Agikuyu and the Akamba. Those are my random thoughts.